Yeah, so property price predictions say that the median house value in Perth could be $1.4 million by 2027. There could be a boom in some other pockets of Australia. We're going to be going over this with some data and metrics to really help you guys make the best decision moving forward. I'm Charlie, you're here with HDK, and we help people replace their income through the Australian property market through the Landlord Academy. Handel, what are some of the key metrics that we can share with people to give them a better understanding of what could happen in the market in the near future, but also the long term?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, great stuff. So today we're going to focus on some of the data points that are actually, pointing towards a very, very, I guess, interesting future for Australia. I mean, I say interesting because we've got a combination of listeners out there, but I can tell it's good news for people who own property. That is for sure, because the market is pointing towards a very, very bright future ahead for property owners right now. I mean, the data's out, the quantum of the shortage of properties. And look, very simple sort of, I guess, computation and understanding is that, look, where there is demand and there is supply, demand increases, supply reduces, you're going to have increase in the asset pricing itself. So right now, we're actually suffering from a shortage of dwellings. And the quantum has been published, and that quantum is 200,000 shortfall in dwellings against the federal government's target over the next 5 years. So, I mean, that's quite a lot. I mean, we've had the economic data actually published by CommSec recently, and looking at different economies across the different states in Australia. South Australia actually came out at the top, but with the data that I saw within that was that South Australia in the last quarter was able to produce and commence, well, I don't mean produce, but commence 2,660 dwellings across the entire state. Now, that's a whole state trying its best to try and put as many houses out there in this awesome, red-hot real estate market right now where developers are making money left, right, and center. And over the last 90 days, South Australia was only able to put 2,660 dwellings, even just start, not to even think about how many would actually bloody complete, but that's how many were started. So, I mean, across the nation, for us to fill that much of a gap is going to take a very, very long time. And that is only if the demand stays the same even. So the data is pointing towards this. And I think you got some data, Charlie, on why the dwellings aren't starting as quickly as they should. Why are we not meeting these demands as quickly as we should right now?
Yeah, well, part of the reason is that the completion of these projects requires workers.
Mm-hmm.
And data in front of me says that we're currently 90,000 tradies short, tradesmen, okay, so these are the people building the buildings, of being able to carry them out to the completion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge shortage. There's no way that's going to be... So, and they're predicting that will be filled over the next 3-4 years, okay?
Yeah.
So by 2027, 2028.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that seems optimistic.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think there's any way we're going to come close to that.
Mm-mm.
I think people are going to be looking at developers in a slightly different light now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of the time developers get a bad rap because they're the ones just trying to make money because they're just trying to flog properties. Well, we need developers. We need developers, and we need tradies we need the people to come in to fill that demand. And whether that's immigration or not, which is another contributing factor to the lack of supply.
What really gets me really surprised about this data is that that's 200,000 shortage as of today. I mean,
yeah,
immigration. So Albanese government was looking at immigration by June 2024 to hit around about that 510,000 mark, and they wanted to reduce that down to about 375,000 because they didn't want as much immigration for whatever reason. And look, I have my opinion on that, but this is not the place for it, guys. We're just simply making observations on the market and how we can capitalize on property investors to be able to make some money with what we're seeing right now. But anyway, that's what exactly, don't shoot the messenger. But that's what they were aiming to do, but they actually came above. So it came out to be that they actually allowed 550,000, so well above even the target, and nowhere near what they were trying to sort of reduce it down to. That works out to be about 2,000 immigrants every day that Australia was accepting over the last 12 months, right? And look, they're doing that because of shortages like the ones you spoke of. You know, the tradie space isn't the only space. I mean, I think Australia pays the most for a plumber per hour than any other nation in the world right now. It's absolutely crazy how expensive tradesmen have become. You know, that also puts a strain on even the dwellings wanting to start. The reason why developers aren't doing their work or starting their development is because price of building houses has just gone off the charts right now. But having said that, across the board, you know, when things cost more to build and it's harder to build and demand is rising, then asset prices will inevitably rise. And yet here we all are trying to discuss, you know, what would interest rates do, go up or down, you know, 1 percentage point here and there. Yes, it does have an impact on, I guess, affordability and stress and whatnot. But, you know, we're talking about stress here, but, you know, the real important question is, are people going to have bloody houses to live in? So, you know, the demand is actually going to be a much stronger driver of growth. And that's why across Australia, with the country being this amazing to live in, let's be honest, it's a pretty good part of the world here. You know, the demand is going to be the strongest driver of that growth. I mean, we're expecting in Sydney to have median price of $2 million, is it? And Perth by $1 million by 2027, right? Yep, that was a data that we're using before. Correct. I mean, right.
Currently, the Perth is about 700,000.
Yeah,
and Sydney is about 1.6 million.
1.6 million.
It's about 20% above what it currently is.
Exactly right. And that really, that number is scary because there will be, you know, over the next, you know, like 2027, that's literally 2.5 years that we're looking at, right? We're going to have median house growth by more than 20/30%. That means there'll be properties that will outperform that as well, which means year on year, there'll be properties that will perform more than 20 to 30% on each year, which is really scary. So, you know, I want to really stress, even though we like talking about market, and we can sit here talking about market until donkey comes home, but more important is that it's the deal. There'll be types of property and the types of stock that will generate much higher growth in equity. And you as investors need to be educated on what stock that there will be that would actually grow. And it's different from market to market. So having that understanding, I think, will be the biggest imperative for investors in today's market. And I would probably worry a bit less on bloody interest rates, because if there's money to be made, there's money to be made.
Whoa, hold up, Landlord Society.
Are you sick and tired of the rat race and you want to start building wealth with property and generate passive income?
Then come and drop us a follow on Instagram and DM us the word Landlord.
The word what, Charlie?
The word Landlord, like the Landlord Society.
Okay, wait, Charles, what's our Instagram handle again?
At landlord.society.
You heard him, everybody. DM us the word landlord to our Instagram to learn more about property investing. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, and another interesting thing about this whole scenario is that apartments are starting to see increased demand as well. Okay, we're seeing like the price predictions for the growth across units and houses are about the same, which is really interesting. It's something that goes against the long-term trend of growth between houses and units, right? But I think part of the reason is because the government is like, there's more grants for people to get into units relative to houses, especially established properties, you know, the ones that you can add value to and buy at a great location. So I think that is, you know, people, it's just where people can, it's affordability as well, you know, high yield if they want to move out and rent it out. I still like, you know, I encourage people to buy a house on land because there's just so much more wealth creation potential with that kind of asset. But it's promising to people that do have units moving forward. Hondo, what are your thoughts on, like, you know, the growth in units?
Yeah, so for those of you who have bought units or apartments, I mean, look, you've made a decision, I guess you had to make. I mean, it's ideally not the best direction forward. And especially in this climate, when you're seeing, and that's been the sort of the overall outlook for the Australian sort of property climate. But you got to understand that that climate is now changing. Because of the demand becoming so much more increased, we are seeing these trends even in apartments, right? So even the developers are struggling to then create more supply. I mean, typically, you know, in a given city with a fixed number of apartments, apartments, you know, they become dated over time. So that there's less desirability, and therefore the prices tend to drop on them. And it's not really attached to a scarce resource, which it being land. So it doesn't come with any land. That was the normal outlook. But as you can see, the landscape is beginning to change. And this is sort of the tendency that that, in my experience was able to observe in Asian markets where, the population goes up way too quickly and there's that increased, crazy amounts of demand, kind of like people walking around like a packet of sardines. Basically, it's going to be so busy. And we are seeing sort of those phenomena that across multiple metropolises around Australia right now, which is really interesting to see. But having said that, the biggest increase even in those markets are still evident in scarce resource being terra firma, the land that actually upholds the asset value of property. So you got to understand that, yes, we do expect almost 30% of apartment and, unit strata properties to actually go up by more than 5% over the next 12 months. However, if that is the effect that we're seeing, then more attention should be had on properties that come with land, because that is going to be an absolute no-brainer. This is where we talk about the stock. But obviously, depending on your affordability, your strategy has to stack up in a way that that acquisition is going to be a reality rather than these numbers being just pie in the air. But these are amazing results that we're seeing right now. And speaking of demand across Australia, I mean, we are on some good data right now where the forecast is actually looking towards states like metropolitan Sydney, which I guess a lot of you may be already priced out, but we're also seeing a lot of strong growth in Brisbane Metro, Perth, and of course Adelaide, which is going to show pretty consistent demand over the course of next 12 months as well, which is really, really encouraging to see. And you know what? Speaking and sort of circling back to the discussion around Perth, because Perth still sees a massive amount of growth. A lot of people are saying it's too late for it, this and that, whatever, but we're just going to share data at the moment. But with a forecast coming in to the next, until 2027, where the median house price is going to go from $700,000 to $1 million. Well, guess what? Right now, over the last, what's the data that I have here at the moment? Over the last 12 months, WA was only able to supply 34% of the population growth with a dwelling. So the population growth happened, let's say 100 units, they were only able to supply 34% of that. So unless Perth does something incredible, and you know what's really interesting? If Perth does something incredible, it's going to actually bring more people to the actual region, and that's actually going to increase the demand yet again. So this kind of shortfall is not a small one. I mean, if it was doing 95%, 98%, sure, like it is what it is. But at just about third of the demand coming into the market, that comes to show that there is actually a lot more room for growth in WA. I wouldn't be so quick to jump. And this isn't something that I am putting out there as an opinion. This is just purely data that I am seeing right now. As to where you go in Perth, that is a much bigger discussion, which we would like to reserve for yet another episode. So make sure you subscribe, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, guys. I mean, WA is undersupplied like a lot of the other states are in Australia right now, but it's just a recipe for growth, in my opinion, as well. Objective opinion, just simply due to the fact that we have nation-leading population growth over the next 5 years. We have, we're struggling with the capacity with construction. All of those factors point towards the demand continuing. Okay, interest rates are only one part of this discussion. That applies to all states, but there is smaller data here that shows it's just going to be a recipe for growth potentially. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Okay, I'm looking to purchase in Perth this year. It's going to be good. I don't know about you, Handel, but
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, exactly right. I mean, depending on the strategy that each of you have, you might have different, resources and different amounts of knowledge and sort of ability to tap into these markets. But yeah, I mean, talking about the supply of, of dwellings as per the population growth in each of the states. I mean, we're looking at this graph and, we look at WA as the belle of the ball, but other states aren't too far behind anyway. I mean, the best states that are doing, the best state that's giving the biggest proportion in supply in relation to the population growth is actually South Australia. South Australia is actually filling 63% of the population growth, which is actually quite on track. Now, that doesn't mean, South Australia isn't going to grow. I mean, that's still a whopping 40% short of where it needs to be. And should there be further growth because of affordability that's generated by the supply, then, there's going to be more people coming into South Australia as well. And look, Queensland is also very undersupplied at the moment, at 43.7%. 50.1% on New South Wales and 55.9% on Victoria. So Australia across the board is looking very, very good. But I want to stress one more time that with all of the listeners and the audience of this wonderful podcast is that you must understand that strategy and stock selection, property selection is everything, right? You could buy a dud property in a hot market. Seriously, it did happen. And I've seen it happen in many people when the interest rates are this high. Yes, let's talk about interest rates, guys, because it does make an individual impact on individual investors. That if you are buying properties right now and that's the wrong property and it's not going to promise you the growth that you can reflect onto the market and you are unable to beat the market returns, well, then buying these kind of stocks is going to make you guys suffer regardless of the market that we play in. Guys, there is no such thing as a good or a bad market, but there is such a thing as a good or a bad deal and a property. So make sure you focus on good properties and how you can go about achieving them. If you guys are interested to learn more, go check out our Instagram, subscribe to our podcast. And until next time, we'll be back with some more info. We'll catch you later. Peace out, guys. Take care.
Guys. Peace.